There's the old adage in baseball that you can't win the pennant in April, but you can sure lose one. And we know that baseball is said to be a marathon and not a sprint, that it's a grind. But for 4 teams, as Yogi Berra once said, it's getting late early. Let's get into who they are and why, here on the Baseball Banter Broadcast. The 4 teams that we're going to be discussing here today are teams that I'm finding some alarming and concerning trends going into the second month of the year. Those 4 teams: the Minnesota Twins, the Atlanta Braves, the Houston Astros, and the Baltimore Orioles. Each one for a little bit of a different reason, and we're going to get into it. Now, when we look at the 4 teams in this danger zone, I think that there is some things to be hopeful for when you look at these squads. You have these players that have been there, that have done that have been through the grind of the 162-game campaign. They've been through the grind of battling through injuries, of battling back from deficits of this type before. When you look at the Atlanta Braves, most recently, last year was an injury-plagued season, losing out on Ronald Acuna Jr. for basically the entire season, Spencer Strider for basically the entire season, and they still found themselves in the postseason. Obviously, a weakened and somewhat shell of themselves. Austin Riley was hurt. Ozzie Albies spent time on the IL as well, so they were without a lot of their core for much of the year. And while most of that core is back, they are still waiting on Strider. They are still waiting on Acuna to be able to make those season debuts and returns. The Atlanta Braves find themselves still in a situation where they are now almost exactly where they were last year with the injuries. But this time, it's ineffectiveness. This time, they find themselves in a position where they have 2 teams ahead of them in the Philadelphia Phillies and the New York Mets that look so much stronger than they do at this point in time. Again, it's early. These could all be overreactions to a struggling start. But when you start the season 0-7, and yes, it was a tough West Coast road trip to start the year, and that could have been the only reason why they got off to that start. But nevertheless, it is a team that is now finding themselves sitting with an under 500 record. At the time of this recording, the Braves find themselves sitting at 4-11. A team that was looked at as the head, as the class of this NL East division, as a team that was going to go back and reclaim the dominance that they once held when it came to commanding the National League Eastern Division. They don't find themselves sitting in that position right now. Matter of fact, they find themselves sitting below the Miami Marlins, who were expected to lose well more than 100 games this year. And yet the Braves find themselves, at this point in time, beneath them in the standings. When it comes to the Minnesota Twins, the team that was expected to be leading the division in the American League Central, a wide open division obviously going into it, as many speculated when it comes to baseball pundits and the like. But nevertheless, the Twins were looked at as the class of that division, the team that was going to come out on top in the battle, the 4-team race for the division crown. Minnesota finds themselves, thankfully, in the division with the Chicago White Sox. Otherwise, they'd also, like the Braves, be the cellar dweller of their own division. Right now, the Twins find themselves at 5-11 at this point in the season. There's no doubt that inconsistency from some of their stars and the injury concerns that are always plaguing this team are serious concerns. Their ace, Pablo Lopez, is now on the IL, and they really haven't done much over the past few off seasons to augment the known injury risk that is Byron Buxton and Carlos Correa. What the Twins decide to do going forward is obviously going to be dependent on where they continue to be when it comes to the standings. There are some opportunities for this team to be able to sell off some players, but that's not what this team was expected to be going into the season. This was expected to be a team that was competing for the postseason. Yet that's not where they find themselves sitting. And again, I preface this and I will repeat myself again, it is early. And these are just some trends to be paying attention to as we head into the second month of the season. But when we see how these teams get off to these starts, and yes, the expanded playoffs allow for teams to kind of push and prolong how long they look and evaluate at their team before making decisions about the trade deadline and which direction they will go. But when you look at what these teams are featuring right now, things aren't looking good. When you look at the players on the Twins roster right now, you have one player that has an OPS over 800. When it comes to the Twins and their ace Pablo Lopez, this was a guy who was brilliant for them last year. Someone who was absolutely bankable. This year, he finds himself already on the IL. What the Twins are going to do from this point forward is really going to be dependent on the direction that the front office is choosing to go. If they're going to try to recoup some value and some assets, obviously it's going to take a big swing when it comes to trading off some pieces. It's going to upset the fan base, but it's something that could help the long-term direction of this organization. We know that there's some questions in terms of the ownership group and the direction that they're looking to go, whether or not to sell. How that affects this team in the 2025 campaign, we have to wait and see. Now, the third team that we're looking at here on this question is that of the Houston Astros. This was the juggernaut of the American League, not just the Western Division, but the entire American League. At one point, this was the juggernaut of Major League Baseball. But the way that owner Jim Crane has decided to make his maneuvers in the offseason when it comes to the financials, this is not the same team that we've seen over the last several years. To me, the biggest loss in this organization came in a couple different ways. James Click, the former GM for the last World Series win back in 2022 for the Astros, was let go after winning the World Series. Dusty Baker was soon thereafter gone, and you now have let go of Alex Bregman, Carlos Correa, George Springer, and now Kyle Tucker was traded away this past offseason. This was the core that this team was built around. Not to mention that the starting pitching, which was the anchor of this team, has found itself consistently and perennially hurt. We have not seen hide nor hair of Christian Javier, Lance McCullers Jr., or Luis Garcia for quite some time now. Framber Valdez is in the final year of his contracted tenure with the Houston Astros and will likely be departing. We've already seen Justin Verlander head for Western pastures out in San Francisco. What the Houston Astros decide to do from this point forward is going to be interesting to see. But in looking at the way that this team has been operating, yes, they made moves, but only seemingly to address future concerns. The acquisition in the Kyle Tucker trade of Cam Smith is an absolutely brilliant move on the part of the Houston Astros front office. The inclusion of a guy who's absolutely going to rake in Dyken Park in Isaac Paredes is a smart move. But these fringe smart moves only go to kind of put a band-aid on the situation that the Astros find themselves in, because they are no longer the powerhouse that they once were. They did nothing really to address the pitching needs that have crept up on this organization over the last several years due to injury. And while, yes, you replace Alex Bregman and Kyle Tucker in one way, shape, or form, there have been other losses that you've never addressed. And while the Astros have done a good job of player development over the last decade plus, due to their different ways of handling their rebuild from a decade and a half ago, this organization is no longer the same as it once was. So when you look at the way that these teams have been operating, this is why it's such a concern to see the start that they've gotten off to. Yes, the Astros got off to a bad start, losing the first 4 back in 2024, but they still managed to rally, win the division, and head to the postseason. That could also be the case this year, as the Astros find themselves at the time of this recording at least, just 1 game under 500. And yes, that may not seem like a reason to put them in this danger zone, but when you look at the competition that is now in that American League Western Division, the Astros find themselves falling a bit short. Now, as we get to the last team on the list, that of the Baltimore Orioles. They, to me, are the one that stands out separate from the others. But they find themselves in the same boat. All of the other teams have some veteran guys and tried to augment with a little bit of youth. The Orioles are a young team, a dynamic, absolutely dynamically powered team of young, hungry talent. But the Orioles did nothing to help that young core in terms of veteran leadership and being able to make up for the loss of Corbin Burnes atop of that pitching staff. The Orioles have a very good back end of the bullpen. The return of the mountain is monumental. Being able to then extend out the rest of that bullpen and have those guys that pitched in the 7th, 8th, and 9th last year now get pushed back to the 6th, 7th, and 8th makes the game shorter for Baltimore. But you have to start the game. And Baltimore did not do enough to address the loss of Corbin Burnes. They did nothing, in my opinion. This obviously signing Charlie Morton and Sogano is a band-aid at best when it comes to having this young core that is capable of winning now. You have to supply them with the tools for success. That means having an ace. Having the guy that can go out there for game one of a postseason series. Having the guy that can go out there and stop losing streaks. We spoke about last week on this channel here, and I'll leave the link to the video down in the description below and up in the show card, about an ace in Zach Wheeler. A baseball ace is the guy that stops those losing streaks. It's the guy you send out there for game one of the World Series. The Orioles did nothing to address that. And now they find themselves in a situation where their top guy, the guy who was supposed to be their top arm, Grayson Rodriguez, is out. He's hurt. And Baltimore now finds himself in a position where they're coming in trailing the other teams in the division. The AL East, much like what the NL West is right now, is a beast of a division. There's no doubt about it that all 5 teams in the AL East could finish first or could fall to last. And if Baltimore did not do enough this offseason to be able to address the needs that they had, in the same way that a year ago they went out and got Corbin Burnes to headline that division, to help them get back to the postseason, to help them try to advance in the postseason. This year you didn't do that. So how much further can you go without a true number one? Again, this is probably an early overreaction to the start of the season. Again, we've seen teams, like I said, with the Nationals, be able to go much later into the season with a losing record, turn it completely around, and go and win the World Series. So each of these 4 teams still have an opportunity to make the necessary changes to find themselves in a situation where they can truly be the team that we expected them to be going into the year. But in looking at it now, there is serious concern, at least in my part, as a baseball fan, for these 4 teams. I want to hear from you, though, baseball fans, especially if you're a fan of one of these 4 teams. Are you concerned about how your team has been playing through the first couple of weeks of the season? Yes, it's early, I get it, but if you have an opportunity to do something to improve your team, if you were the GM of your squad, what would that be? Let me know that down in the comment section below. As always, if you like what you're seeing from us here at the Baseball Banter Broadcast, make sure you leave that down in the comments as well. We love to hit those compliments. If there's a video suggestion that you'd like to make, something that you'd like to see here on a video essay, let us know that as well. As always, on this YouTube channel, you know the deal. Hit the like, subscribe, and the bell for post notifications, as it does truly help us build up this community and this channel and grow it further. As always, in the description of this video is our Linktree link, and it has all the pertinence to our merchandise store, sponsor links, audio platforms, and social platforms. So make sure you check us out down there as well. And if you do purchase anything from the merchandise store, we do appreciate it, as it does help us continue to grow this channel. And once again, I want to thank you for joining me here on the Baseball Banter Broadcast, and we'll catch you guys on the next video. Peace.